Great leaders aren't born. They're not made either. They're in the making. They're constantly creating and recreating themselves, their companies, and their leadership. I'm Damon Lemby, the CEO of Learn It, a global corporate training company that has upskilled more than 1.8 million individuals. Coming to business from a college baseball career, I like to bring an athlete's perspective to leadership. I'm here to share with you how Learn It All leaders think and act differently, how great leaders learn, and why Learn It Alls and their companies can outpace their competition. I talk a lot about what's the difference between being a Learn It All and a Know It All. And I always like to start with a Know It All. A Know It All is somebody who, we all know them, they come to the game, they come to the conversation, and they have it all figured out. They're not interested in what you have to say. When you start talking, their eyes are kind of glazing over. Status quo, that's the way it's going to be. On the other hand, you have a Learn It All. What I consider a Learn It All is to somebody who's open, who's humble, not afraid to admit that they're not the smartest person in the room. They're always interested in other people's ideas, and they're curious and constantly wanting to learn. And a Learn It All leader is somebody who understands, and I talk about this in my book, leaders aren't born, they're not made, they're in the making. So they're continuously learning to evolve. Imagine you're 90 days into a new job. Your boss calls you in for your first performance review. Before you even have the opportunity to sit down, they say, Damon, we made a big mistake. When we hired you, we thought you'd be a top producer for our team. And now that we've had a little while, I don't think you're the right fit. You don't belong here. That's exactly what happened to me when I was 17 years old. I was sitting in front of Hall of Fame baseball coach Andy Lopez at Pepperdine University. But then he followed up with, that's not what we think of you, Damon. That's what you think of yourself. That was the moment I learned what imposter syndrome really means and how to overcome it. That's what I'm here to share with you today. My 3-step process, well, first is you got to identify what your fear is, what's bothering you and why, right? So once you have that addressed, my 3-step process really is, step number 1 is work hard. I'm not saying you need to work 10 to 14 hours a day, but you need to put in hard, consistent work. Step number 2 is focus. If you're afraid of something, it's easy to procrastinate and try to do something else. It's like we talked about earlier, I'll work on this instead. But you need to really focus in on what your goal is. Now, once you've worked hard and you've put in the focus, step 3 is really learn and let go. And what I mean by learn and let go is, most of my life, Adam, was really dedicated to playing sports. I came in, I was a high school All-American. I came in and I was pretty intimidated. I was like, Everybody's as good as I am or better. Do I even belong here? If somebody asked me, do you have a superpower or secret sauce? I would say, no, I don't. I don't have any secret powers. If there's one thing I'm most proud of over the years that I think I've done a really good job is being able to build great teams. And so when I look at hiring and building a great team, it's really kind of call it my 3F approach. One is you want to find great talent. Where do you find great talent? The way I was able to get great talent was bring them in early on in their career, give them the tools and resources they need to be successful, let them fail, and support them. Let them try things, What I would like to leave people with is that whether you're in management, leadership, or anything, that there's always more you can learn, and there's always more you can do. And sometimes learning isn't easy, but go out, get out of your comfort zone, learn new things, and continue to evolve. Last thing I'll say about that is, don't be too hard on yourself either. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to be vulnerable and learn from those lessons and move forward.